Take heed that no man deceive you. Matthew 24:4. This warning was repeated 5 times by Jesus Christ when his disciples asked him what would be the sign of his coming as king to rule the earth. He told them that the deception would become so great that even his true disciples would almost be taken in by the deception. Today's world is that world of total deception that Jesus warned us about.
The question that often arises among exposers of the New World Order conspiracy is, who is the main culprit behind all this deception? Is it the Jews or is it the Jesuits? Well, I hope I can solve this dilemma by introducing another component into the argument. That is the character of GOG, who is usually referenced in the same breath with Magog. Gog and Magog.
It is my contention that this mysterious figure of Gog represents both the Jesuits and the Jews.
Gog appears in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, as a warlord coming from the land of Magog, and who gathers a large army to invade the mountains of Israel. After many days, in the latter years, in the latter days. Ezekiel chapter 38, verses 8 and 16. My book, The Matrix of Gog, and the 2.5-hour DVD presentation on the same subject thoroughly reveals who this character is and presents his history from ancient times up to and beyond his invasion of the mountains of Israel and Palestine. I show how this invasion of the mountains of Israel began simultaneously with the Balfour Declaration.
The Balfour Declaration gives Israel or Palestine to the Jews by way of Lord Rothschild.
And the conquest of Christian Russia in November of 1917.
The prophecy against Gog is both literal and symbolic. Literal portrays Gog's literal physical invasion of the mountains of Israel and Palestine. 2. Symbolic, it portrays Gog's demon invasion of the spiritual mountains of Israel, the Christian nations, and the Christian church.
Gog is revealed as none other than the arch enemies of Jesus Christ, the so-called Jews, which Jesus said are from the synagogue of Satan. Read that in Revelation chapter 2, verse 9, and chapter 3, verse 9. Just a quick synopsis to make my point. The Septuagint, which is the translation of the Old Testament scriptures into Greek, made around 300 BC, reveals 2 things about Gog. 1, he is synonymous with Agag, who was the king and leader of Amalek, of the biblical kingdom of Esau, Edom.
This is shown in the Septuagint translation of Numbers 24:7, which instead of using the name Agag, which appears in most of our Bibles, the 72 Jewish translators of the Septuagint rendered the name as Gog.
First, from the King James Version, Numbers 24:7. It says, his king, which is referring to Christ, shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. Now, the Septuagint version, Numbers 24:7. His kingdom, Christ's kingdom, will be lifted up above GOG, and his kingdom will be increased. This important scripture shows us that GOG is synonymous with Agag. Agag is a title like king or pharaoh. Agag was the title of the leader of the tribe of Amalek, and he was the grandson of Esau. Esau, who is also called Edom, was Jacob, Israel's twin brother. In the Bible story, it was Father Abraham who begat Isaac, who begat the twins, Jacob, Israel, and Esau, Edom. Jacob, Israel, had 12 sons who were the founders of the 12-tribe nation of Israel. With the Jews being a nickname for Israelites from the tribe of Judah. Esau, Edom, in the Bible story, was the rebel, who also had several sons, and his kingdom continually tried to subvert God's plan throughout the entire Bible story, both Old Testament and New Testament. The Bible is full of pronouncements and prophecies against Esau, Edom, and Agag, Amalek. About 150 years before Christ's birth, wars broke out between the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Esau, Edom. Finally, Edom was defeated and given the choice to convert to Judaism or leave their country. This is recorded by the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus in his book Antiquities of the Jews. This defeat and conversion happened 126 years before Christ was born. Josephus says that these Edomites became full-fledged Jews at that time. According to the Jewish historian Josephus, who wrote around 70 to 95 AD, the Jewish Maccabean leader John Hyrcanus conquered Edom in 126 BC. He writes, Hyrcanus took also Dora and Marissa, cities of Idumea, which is the Greek word for Edom, and subdued all the Idumeans, and permitted them to stay in that country if they would circumcise their genitals and make use of the laws of the Jews. And they were so desirous of living in the country of their forefathers that they submitted to the use of circumcision and the rest of the Jewish ways of living, at which time, therefore, that this befell them, they were hereafter none other than Jews. End of quote. Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 9. The second thing that the Septuagint translation reveals is that GOG is a demonic entity. This is revealed in the Septuagint translation of Amos chapter 7, where the prophet sees a horde of devouring locusts, and the chief locust was Gog the king. Here he writes, Thus the Lord showed me, and behold, a swarm of locusts were coming, and behold, one of the young devastating locusts was Gog, the king. Amos 7:1 from the Septuagint. This swarm of locusts has to be symbolic, because in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 27, it says that, quote, the locusts have no king. But in the book of Revelation, it shows us that there is coming a demonic swarm of locusts that do have a king over them, and his name is Apollyon, or Abaddon, the destroyer. This demonic locust swarm will be unleashed under the fifth trumpet judgment and the first woe of Revelation chapter 9.
After the catastrophes of the first four trumpets of Revelation, the fifth trumpet and first woe unleashes these demonic locusts of Gog,
who is given the keys to the bottomless pit and releases a swarm of demonic locusts to torment all those who do not have the seal of God in their foreheads. And the torment is such to the degree that they will wish to die. In one of history's great reversals, we are shown that Herod the Great, who was an Edomite, was made king of Judea, or king of the Jews, by Rome
in 44 BC.
If you remember your Christmas stories, Herod was the one who tried to kill Jesus as a child. His son Herod Antipas was the one who participated in the murder and crucifixion of Christ along with the Jewish leaders. Of course, they were both from the tribe of Esau. The Herodian dynasty, which became king of the Jews, were Edomites or Gogites. Mark in his Gospel, chapter 3, verse 6, reveals how the Jewish leaders, the Pharisees, plotted together with the Herodians or Edomites on how to murder Christ. Gog was manifested in the Herods as both the king and the demon spirit behind the king. Eventually, Gog the king dies, but Gog the spirit, the demon, lives on and inhabits another king, in this case, his son, Herod Antipas. And so on down the line, up till today, where we have the Rothschilds and the Jesuits, both descendants of Gog. The Jews of the time of the apostles, who became believers, were the foundation of what became known as the ecclesia, or the congregation of the called out ones, poorly translated into English as the church, which has degenerated in most minds to building worship, sad to say.
Only true Jews in the world are those that follow the King of the Jews, Jesus Christ, as Paul said. He is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, all the ritualistic circumcision. He is a Jew which is one inwardly, and true circumcision is of the heart, in the spirit.
The rejecting Jews and Edomites of the first centuries after Christ became what Jesus called, in the book of Revelation, the synagogue of Satan, who lie and say they are Jews and are not.
Rejecting Jews became as Esau, who sold his birthright.
When these unbelieving Jews and Edomites killed the King of the Jews, Jesus Christ, and refused to repent of their crime of deicide, and instead cooperated with the evil Herodian Edomite goksters, these rejecting Jews inherited all the biblical prophecies against Edom and Agag and the Amalekites, which are many, including their soon-coming final destruction and burial ground in the land of Edom,
East of the Dead Sea.
as predicted in Ezekiel chapter 39.
In 70 AD, Josephus recounts how 12,000 Edomite soldiers joined with the Jews in a losing war against the Romans. History recounts that nearly 1 million Jews and Edomites lost their lives in this war.
After the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of all the Jewish genealogical records by the Romans at this time, the rejecting Jews and Edomites were completely amalgamated into one body known as the Synagogue of Satan. At least 5 modern Jewish encyclopedias and history books record that Edom is part of modern Jewry. Modern Jewry became the GOG of Ezekiel's 38 prophecy because GOG Agag is the king of Edom, and the only place to find Edom today is in Jewry, in the synagogue of Satan. Because the Romans totally decimated Jerusalem and slaughtered nearly 1 million Jews during the 70 AD war, the few remaining Jews, Edomites, fled the area to find refuge in pre-existent Jewish colonies in Babylon, which is modern Iraq, and Persia, modern Iran, while others fled south into Egypt and Libya, and eventually migrated into Spain. The survivors who went north ended up compiling their unholy book, which became known as the Babylonian Talmud.
The Talmud is the evil traditions Jesus warned us about in Matthew chapter 16 and 23, and which Zechariah the prophet called the curse that goes forth over all the earth. They also succeeded in converting an entire nation to Talmudic Judaism. This nation is known as Khazaria.
This took place around 740 years after Christ and was a fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy. Quote, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye compass land and sea to make one proselyte, and when he is made, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves." Matthew 23:15. This conversion of Khazaria is an important fact because it shows the fulfillment of the prophecy of Ezekiel 38, verse 6, which foretells of Gog recruiting, quote, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters into his army. This house or lineage of Togarmah is none other than this nation of Khazaria. This conversion event is reported and bragged about in modern Jewish literature. The Jewish Encyclopedia itself
recounts how around 960 AD,
Hajdai ibn Shaprut, a Sephardic Jewish advisor in the court of the Muslim caliph or ruler of Cordoba, Spain, heard of a Jewish kingdom north of the Caucasus Mountains, and he sent letters via merchants to the king, or as he was called, the Kagan, of this Jewish kingdom known as Khazaria, asking him if he and his countrymen were descendants of the lost tribes of Israel. And the Kagan replied,
"No, we are descended from Caesar, the seventh son of Togarma."
According to the biblical record of genealogy as found in Genesis chapter 10, Togarma was a descendant of Japheth, the elder son of Noah. This means that Togarma and his descendants are not Semites, because the original Israelites trace their lineage back to Noah's son Shem, whose descendants are called Semites. The kicker to all this is that today the majority of these Khazarian Jews who migrated into Eastern Europe and who today make up about 90% of what the world recognizes as Jews today are not real Jews biologically or religiously. They are not religious Jews, since they did not convert to the Old Testament Torah, but to the demonic Talmud. And they are not racial descendants from Abraham, because they are descendants of Japheth and not Shem. These Jews were first mixed with Edom, Agag, GOG in 126 BC.
and then incorporated into the non-Semitic house of Togarma.
This Khazarian nation,
who occupy Israel today. It would almost be funny if it wasn't so evil.
this has been proven both historically in several books, such as The 13th Tribe by Arthur Koestler, and biologically through DNA genetic testing by the Jewish doctors Dr. Arela Oppenheim of Hebrew University in 2001.
Her research found that virtually all the Jews came from Khazar blood.
And by Dr. Eran El-Haik of Johns Hopkins in 2011.
Dr. El-Haik proved that most Ashkenazi Jews are genetically related to the non-Semitic Khazars and not the biblical tribe of Judah.
This is the historical background of the Jews who fled north, who became known as Ashkenazi Jews.
They were named after Ashkenaz, who was Togarma's brother. And they both had Magog as their uncle,
as recorded in Genesis chapter 10. They are Gog's army of the north. But what happened to the Jews who fled south? Well, they ended up having small colonies in Libya, Yemen, Ethiopia, and migrated into Portugal and Spain. If you check Ezekiel chapter 38, verses 5 and 6, this is where Gog gathers his army to invade the mountains of Israel beginning in 1917. Gog's invasion is not future. It already happened. It was an invasion of immigration by all these Jewish bands out of these countries led by the Ashkenazi Jews of the North Quarters. They were joined by Persia, which was all the Persians who became Jews during the time of the book of Esther. And Gomer, which was the Jews in Europe. Gog's invasion was and is mostly financed by Rothschild banking money. Rothschild literally means red shield in German. And this is why Ezekiel's prophecy says all of Gog's army has shields. Gog's army is financed and protected by Rothschild, who is none other than the latest manifestation of Gog. Get my DVD and book if you really want to delve into this. Gog invades the mountains of Israel with his army, his Jewish army, from Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah, the Khazars, of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. The Jews who fled south and into Spain became known as Sephardic Jews, Sepharad being the Jewish word for Spain. They were mainly merchants, and they really flourished under the Muslim Moorish invasion and occupation of Spain. After the Catholics finally drove out the Moors in the late 1400s, they decided to rid the land of all anti-Christian elements. At the time, there was about 400,000 GOG Sephardic Jews living in the Spanish peninsula. The Spaniards offered them a choice: convert or die or leave. There was a few pogroms against the Jews in which thousands of Jews were killed. Around 250,000 Jews at that time saw the light and decided to become baptized into the Catholic Church. A few were real converts. The rest became Christians of convenience and became known as conversos and by Moranos. These Moranos were already highly successful merchants and some of the richest families throughout Spain and Portugal. These Moranos became known as crypto or hidden Jews. The Moranos had all the trappings of secret societies with special handshakes and clandestine codes to recognize each other. They were Catholics on the outside, but secretly Jews on the inside. In 1619, the Bank of Hamburg was founded by 40 Morano families, becoming the main part of the foundation of Jewish-controlled modern banking. Their wealth grew even more in the Americas, where they were the main ship owners in the slave trade. They were soon joined by their twofold more the child of hell, Khazarian Gokster converts from the house of Togarmah, the Khazars, led by the Rothschilds, leaders of the Ashkenazi Jews. As I said, the Ashkenazi Jews comprise about 90% of what the world recognizes as Jews today. The Marranos intermarried with aristocrats and European nobility, and now, with the Khazarian Ashkenazi Jews, run the world from behind the scenes. And their machinations became the driving force in Masonry and the foundation of communism. These Marranos also became the Jesuit worms inside the already corrupt Catholic Church. Ignatius of Loyola, who was the founder of the order, was from a family of converted Jews. His successor, Diego Lainez, was also a crypto-Jew, as were dozens of early Jesuits. Jesuits were founded by members of the Southern Army of GOG, and today boast their most famous member as Pope of the largest so-called Christian religion in the world, the Catholic Church.
The Catholics have been on board with the Synagogue of Satan since 1534, when Ignatius Loyola founded the Catholic Order of the Jesuits. Loyola was born into a Spanish family of nobility, and all were supposed converted Jews called conversos or moranos. In his early life, he was a soldier and member of the Alumbrados, or Illuminati. The Alumbrados ranks were filled with Marrano Jews. By 1534, Loyola had transformed the Alumbrados into the Jesuits. Basically, they are the religious arm of GOG to infiltrate and destroy Christianity. They are in all secular society, politics, education, banking, etc. The Jesuits' constitution reads like the code of the mafia: extreme secrecy, and the end justifies the means. To achieve power is their modus operandi. Now we have Pope Francis, surname Bergaglia. Ha! One of God's little jokes. He is the first Jesuit pope. He looks like a smiley face, but I believe he is a total revolutionary, whose job is to destroy the last vestiges of faith and lead the sheeple into the new world order of Lucifer.
The eerie thing about this current pope, Pope Francis, was known as the Jesuit father Jorge Mario Bergaglia. Gog is part of his last name. You may say that's really stretching it, Daniel, but I'll tell you what. God is in charge of everything, even names, and God has given us a clue as to just who we have here, if you are listening. The founding leaders of the Jesuits were crypto-Jews from Spain. This is history. The Jesuits ingratiated themselves with the Vatican by becoming more Catholic than the Catholics and became the leaders of the Counter-Reformation. They also wormed their way into other religious orders like the Dominicans, becoming leaders of the Inquisition under the converso Torquemada and his crypto henchman Diego Danza. The Jesuits were basically founded to stop the rising tide of the Reformation started by Martin Luther and others, whose battle cry was sola scriptura, only the scriptures. The reformers demanded that Christianity be founded on the scriptures, and only the Bible was to be the foundation of faith, not popes or papal encyclicals or churchy tradition.
Now, as worms within the already rotten apple of the Catholic Church, the Jesuits set out to undermine faith in the Scriptures.
And what better way to do it than to start with the first account written in the Scriptures, the creation of heaven and earth. Up until the 1500s, and for thousands of years prior, all cultures, from Egypt to China, believed with their natural senses that the earth was flat and motionless and surrounded by some kind of a dome in which the sun, moon, and stars rotated around a fixed, stationary earth. This is called geocentrism. Only rarely did philosophers like Pythagoras, considered to be the father of Freemasonry, put forth irrational ideas like a globe earth. But in 1517, with Martin Luther's Reformation gaining a huge following throughout Europe, and with Luther's emphasis on Scripture, the Catholic Church responded with the Counter-Reformation against the Scriptures, burning heretics at the stake and often using their Bibles as kindling to start the fire. This anti-Reformation was to be headed up by none other than the Jesuit priest of Ignatius Loyola, these crypto-Jewish conversos from the southern army of GOG. They decided to go for the throat, and Rome began to rewrite reality, starting with the very foundation of Scripture, the first thing God said, Genesis chapter 1.
It began with Nicholas Copernicus and his treatise on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres. Copernicus was a devout Catholic and a doctor of canon law. In his latter years, he was nominated to fill the seat of a bishop. Copernicus dedicated his treatise to Pope Paul III. It was pushed on the public to undermine the cry that the reformers had of Solo Scriptura.
Copernicus had wished to have his manuscript published after his death, but powerful ecclesiastical forces within the church like Bishop Gies and the papal secretary Windemanstadt forced his hand, and in 1543 it went to press. There were no protests within the Catholic Church, but many reformers, including Luther, Melanchthon, and John Calvin, spoke emphatically against it for biblical reasons. The fact that the Catholics themselves were the first to promote this lie and then prosecute Galileo Galilei for endorsing it can only be understood in the light of the Hegelian dialectic, of which the Jesuits are masters of, as are the Masons and the Communists. These three diabolical groups are all part of the army of GOG and led by Gogsters at the higher echelons. This Hegelian dialectic is where you pretend to fight against something so that you can become the controlled opposition in order that you can really direct it and control it and steer whatever you are supposedly fighting to your intended destination.
This concept of controlled conflict was really created by the diabolical Jesuit army of GOG, and only later blamed on Hegel, probably by a Gogster Jesuit scholar, to create more obfuscation.
Lenin, Vladimir, not John, is quoted as saying, "The best way to fight the opposition is to lead it." The reformers were catching on to what these Jesuits were doing with their sun-centered lie.
Luther commented, "The fool wants to turn the whole art of astronomy upside down. However, as Holy Scripture tells us, so did Joshua bid the sun to stand still and not the earth." And Calvin said, "Some who are so deranged, not only in religion, but who in all things reveal their monstrous nature, that they will say that the sun does not move, it is the earth which shifts and turns."
And so the Vatican suddenly switched sides, and Galileo was tried for his theory that the moon influenced the tides. Galileo's trial was conducted by that evil geocentrist,
the Vatican Cardinal Bellarmine, who was later canonized as a saint. And guess what? Bellarmine was a Jesuit.
Ha! What a great bunch of con men these guys are. Hollywood should do a remake of The Sting, using Jesuits in the role of Paul Newman and Robert Redford. The Jesuits jumped on Copernicus's theory like pigs on poop. The Jesuit Christopher Clavius used it to come up with the Gregorian calendar. And the Jesuits actually took over astronomy at this time, pushing out or killing off others who disagreed with their new sun-centered cosmology. The astronomer Kepler grew up in the same house with his Jesuit astrologer uncle Saldaldus. Kepler became the pupil of the astronomer and geocentrist Tycho Brahe. And upon the mysterious death of his mentor, Kepler was named imperial mathematician, whereupon Kepler began rewriting all of Brahe's observations to agree with a heliocentrist cosmology. The Jesuits fully supported the Protestant Kepler and carried on voluminous correspondence with him. The historian Dr. Jorge Scheffler wrote that during the 17th and 18th centuries, Jesuits were eminent in the field of science, especially astronomy, and were responsible for discovering many of the craters on the moon, named for the Jesuit astronomers who found them. The Jesuits invented the lies that every child is taught in schools, such as, Columbus knew the world was round because he could see the ships disappearing over the horizon. Oh, really? Here's Bill Nye, the science guy, with a demo for the kiddos.
Furniture of the Earth Horizon model of science! And this blue stuff is like the ocean. And this boat, well, it's like a boat. Anyway, watch. As ships sail away, they don't disappear all at once. No, first, the bottom will disappear. See, the bottom of the ship is gone. Now we can see midway up, and then the whole thing disappears. Now, ships came back. They didn't fall off a table. So people realized that the world is curved. I mean, it's a big curve, but it's curved. So, the process of testing claims, the world is flat, the world is round, is what we call science.
Thanks, Bill, you lying sack of mental turds. Here's what really happens. Ships only disappear because of the laws of perspectives and because of the atmosphere full of gaseous vapors and dust.
The ships can be brought back into view with any telescope and only eventually disappear because of perspective and the atmosphere.
And how about being able to see distant shorelines with your eyes or with binoculars, which should be hundreds of feet below the horizon if the earth was round, as the liars contend it is?
The Chicago skyline can often be seen from sea level 60 miles away from across Lake Michigan. When Joshua Nowitzki photographed this phenomenon, several news channels quickly claimed his picture was of a superior mirage. Although these do occur, the mirage will always appear upside down and somewhat hazy. Despite the photograph showing otherwise, their model insists that the Chicago skyline hides behind 2,400 feet of curvature.
What I'm doing here is not a thorough treatise on the flat earth. For that, click the title under the screen GOG Magog and scroll down until you see the links, and then you'll get some real information. The video that I am doing here is to show you that it was the Jesuits who were the main culprits behind the promotion of the spinning globe Earth and the heliocentric global lie, and how this lie has to do with the Revelation 12 sign. The Jesuit theories were all based on mathematics, And according to the mathematicians themselves, mathematics can prove a sun-centered system or an earth-centered system. The idea of what was up there was all in the theoretical realm in Copernicus's day, as no one had ever achieved flight until the 20th century. Now you have NASA in control of the lie, and what they give you is nothing but photoshopped cartoons to just further your brainwashing. For a thorough treatise on this Jesuit conspiracy and how it was foisted on humanity, please again see the links under my title and just scroll down. The fact is, the Vatican and the Jesuit astronomers today own more observatories than any government in the world. And the Jesuit astronomers were the driving influence of all modern astronomy, becoming court astronomers as far away as China in the 1700s. It was a Jesuit priest, Father Georges Lemaitre, who invented the insane theory of the Big Bang creation of the universe. The Big Bang is basically telling you how a car is created out of the explosion of an automobile plant, or how an encyclopedia is produced by blowing up a print shop. It only makes sense to those thoroughly educated, because the more you are educated, the more you are brainwashed until you are feeding on mental turds like the Big Bang. Modern education is not only against the truth of scriptures, but also against your own rational mind, to turn you into the fool on the hill who sees the sun going down because of perspective, but the eyes in his head, because of mental brainwashing, sees the earth spinning round.
Sees the sun going down, and the eyes in his head see the world spinning round.
Antarctica is not a continent, but a 360-degree landmass made up of ice that holds the oceans within. When we look at a Gleason's map from 1892 that states at the top that it's scientifically and practically correct, as is. We see this.
Gleason's map is also the flat Earth map. This map is stuck right in your face. It is the map of the United Nations, right there in front of your face all the time. It is also the map of the International Maritime Association, the World Meteorological Organization, and the International Civil Aviation Organization. There's no way to fall off the edge of the Earth, because Antarctica is a 360-degree ice wall around the nearly 60,000-mile circumference of the Earth. It is from 100 to 200 feet tall, as these photos and videos show. In the flat Earth model, the sun circles over and around the Earth from tropic to tropic, solstice to solstice, causing the seasons.
The Jesuits, in partnership with the United States government, own the largest infrared telescope in the world, located in the Arizona desert.
They have fondly called it Lucifer, apparently after their favorite angel.
I don't believe the Jesuits knew where they were going with all these lies when they started out, but their father, the devil, knew. They created their false cosmology in order to undermine faith in the Bible, so that Rome could maintain control over their minds. Then, on this foundational lie, they built the insanity of the evolution of the species. And now, in modern times, they've given us the Big Bang of infinite space, populated by perhaps hundreds of solar systems able to support alien life. This is the final lie to prepare your mind for the great deception. For soon after the Revelation 12 sign, Satan and his angels are going to be cast into the earth. Only it won't appear as this. No, to you who have been prepped and brainwashed by countless TVs and movies, it will seem like the aliens have arrived. When Christ was crucified, Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell us that there was darkness over all the earth from the 6th hour until the 9th hour. Luke 23:44. That's a 3-hour solar eclipse from noon until 3 p.m. A solar eclipse never lasts longer than 7.5 minutes. Some believe Luke's account to be a myth, but this solar eclipse was recorded by 4 different secular sources: Thales, Phlegon, Africanus, and Tertullian.
Phlegon wrote,
In the 4th year of the 202nd Olympiad, which is 33 AD, there was the greatest eclipse of the sun, and it became night in the 6th hour of the day, noon, so that the stars even appeared in the heavens. And there was a great earthquake in Bithynia, and many things were overturned in Nicaea. Many ancient astronomers believed that there is a dark star or stars that can cause an eclipse such as this. NASA in the 1980s put out a news release that some astronomers had discovered a dark celestial body that did not put out light and could only be seen with infrared light. There are, at this moment, several countries who have infrared telescopes positioned in Antarctica, and they are tracking this dark star today. The largest infrared binocular telescope in the world is in the Arizona desert and jointly owned by the Jesuits and the USA government. They have created an anagram for it, which gives this infrared telescope tracking this dark infrared star the name Lucifer. Lucifer, of course, is another name for that great red dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, who's soon to be cast out of the heavens and into the earth, according to Revelation 12.
And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and there was found no more place for them in heaven. And the great red dragon, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, for he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So you better get ready, because what's going to happen, GOG has been set up to not only bring an Armageddon of destruction in the political, economic, philosophical, educational, war realm, but an Armageddon of your mind. They have destroyed the reality of the way things really are and have set you up for the great deception.
Dark clouds are gathering, red skies lowering, be on you and me. Batten down the hatches, lower all the sails, head below decks before the gale. When that storm breaks, will you be safe in a ship that will not fail? 'Cause all the signs in heaven, they say the storm, it is near. On earth waves a roar and men's hearts fail them for fear. 'Cause all the signs in heaven, they say the storm, it is near. On earth waves a roar and men's hearts fail them for fear. Those ships in port say the storm won't come. They'll lay there when they are undone. That shallow place they thought was safe will become their watery grave. Launch out my mates into the deep. That's the only safe place to be. And follow the wind, he is our friend, safe for eternity. 'Cause all the signs in heaven, they say the storm, it is near. On earth waves a roar and men's hearts fail them for fear. 'Cause all the signs in heaven, they say that storm, it is near. On earth waves a roar and men's hearts fail them for fear.
Come out of that horror right now. Flee from the midst of Babylon. Deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon. Get out of that horror right now. Leave her right now.